So I've been on record as saying the upcoming Lanterns TV series is one of the few DCU projects that I actually have a little bit of interest in, and that's mostly because I recognize the potential that there is with the Green Lantern characters and stories that really hasn't been tapped into yet in live action in a meaningful way. Not to mention, this will be the first non-James Gunn-centric project in the DCU, so in that aspect, I think it needs to be a home run. Especially since everything that we've seen in the DCU so far, at least in my opinion, hasn't been. Unfortunately, like a lot of modern entertainment, the more people involved talk about it prior to its release, the less interested I become. And this is why I've always been a strong advocate for letting projects speak for themselves. Because by talking about them too much, revealing too much, you could ruin the perception of this series before it's even released. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So the upcoming Lantern series has been described as a buddy cop story and has been compared to True Detective by some people involved. Now, a lot of traditional Green Lantern fans have taken issue with that because they prefer their Green Lantern stories to have a more cosmic feel to them. And I do understand that criticism, especially when we're talking about a show that is supposed to be reintroducing these characters and mythos to a new audience. At the same time, for me personally, I was willing to give it a chance because we have seen superhero stories take a more grounded approach in live action before, and it usually results in some of the best entertainment to come out of the comic book movie genre.
Because it's all part of the plan.
I do think there could be something interesting about taking Green Lanterns out of their cosmic element, even if it's only temporary, and dropping them in the middle of a more earthbound conflict. From a business perspective, I also understand how doing the show this way could be more cost-effective than going the cosmic route. But listen, at the end of the day, it's going to be the writing, it's going to be the vision, it's going to be how they introduce and build these characters that matters. And hopefully they are able to set up a compelling story, plot, and conflict in the process, like good storytellers should. Listen, I love the buddy cop scenario, who doesn't? In those scenarios, we typically have two characters coming together who are typically very different in their outlook. And throughout the course of their time together, they learn to appreciate each other, and to me, that is infinitely relatable. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is when the idea of passing the torch starts to get thrown around. Because if there's one thing that modern Hollywood in general has taught us in recent years, it's that they rarely understand how to effectively pass the torch from an older character to a younger character in a satisfying way. According to an interview in Men's Health, Lantern's showrunner had this to say. Lanterns is again described as being just as much of a buddy cop show as it is a superhero show. No problem there, but he goes on to say, our show is in a lot of ways about replacement. When should someone step aside, and when is it time for the next person to take the reins? And this, my friends, is unfortunately the moment where red flags start popping up everywhere if we take into account modern Hollywood's recent track record. Now, to be fair, we need to see this story play out in full context before we are fully able to say whether it works or not. Is there a way to make a story like this work? Absolutely. Do I have a ton of confidence in the people involved to make it happen? No, not really.
Absolutely f***ing not.
Now, we obviously do not have a deep-rooted connection to this version of Hal Jordan, because this is going to be his first appearance in live action in the DCU. But that also could ultimately be the reason why none of this works. Because you are already putting arguably the most recognizable Green Lantern on the back burner, or worse, killing him, before he has an opportunity to become fully established. Nobody wants to see Hal Jordan be used as a stepping stone to get John Stewart over. First of all, that would be disrespectful to the legacy of Hal Jordan if it is done in an unsatisfying way. And I don't really think John Stewart as a character needs the rub because he is just as recognizable as Hal Jordan in a lot of ways. And featuring him in a replacement character role could be deemed disrespectful to him as well.
No, Don't like that.
The reason that I always thought the Green Lanterns were so interesting is that there are so many of them that can exist at the same time. The direction of this show would seem to contradict that, as the showrunner is suggesting that Hal Jordan needs to learn to step aside. And again, full context matters, so we can't fully judge it yet, but this is a slippery slope that they are trying to navigate on. You've already alienated some diehard Green Lantern fans by not making this show cosmic. What do you think is going to happen if you represent Hal Jordan in a way that is not up to their standards? Plus, we have to consider, is this the reason that so many actors were rumored for this role, but ultimately didn't end up getting it? Was the part not desirable to these actors because of the way that the script might underutilize Hal Jordan? Something to think about. Also, I can't help but point out that this once again seems rushed to feature Hal Jordan at the end of his career, presumably, something that critics of the DCEU said that they were initially against. It's yet another instance of DCU projects not really building a new universe, but more or less just dropping us in the middle of an already established universe.
I don't get it.
Let's put it this way. If this was an Elseworlds tale, and they were introducing us to a more aged Hal Jordan, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. This being a part of the DCU feels like we are bypassing or glossing over important characters and stories and even introductions that are needed to make said character into something more special. This Hal Jordan may retire or die before we really get a chance as an audience to get to know him. And that would be unfortunate for Hal Jordan fans everywhere and for fans of great storytelling. Sometimes I strongly believe that a lot of these projects would be a lot better off if the people involved just didn't talk about them prior to their release. Because the last thing that I think people want is yet another unsatisfying passing of the torch scenario.
Anybody care about what I want?
I do.
Shut up. Get out.
So I was planning on stopping this video right here, but then more Lanterns news came out as I was making it. And unfortunately, this news is kind of reinforcing my concerns about how Hal Jordan will be represented in this series. The Lantern showrunner went on to say John Stewart's construct powers are based in creativity. No problem there. But then he says Hal Jordan, quote, just wants to hit everything with a big green fist. Now this kinda has those James Gunn calling Superman a big old galoot feels to it. Now I understand obviously that Hal Jordan is more of a hotshot character, a maverick, so you would expect his constructs to reflect that. But does this not sound like them minimizing what Hal Jordan is capable of? I mean, to me, he's always been a bit more than big green fists. It's like they are taking the most simplistic interpretation of Hal possible and slapping him up on the screen, just so they can make John Stewart's use of the powers look more sophisticated. I don't know, it's just the way that he kind of worded that. It made me feel like they were not taking Hal Jordan's capabilities seriously. Again, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out, but they are not doing a great job of selling me on the idea that this is the Hal Jordan that we all know and love.
Y'all be cool. Right on.